It was supposed to be a weekend getaway, a break from everything. Thomas, Caitlin, Ann, Sean, and I had been best friends for years, and we thought nothing could ruin our time in the woods. We set out to find a remote camping spot, a place where we could disconnect and just enjoy being together. We didn't expect to find something else entirely. The sun had just begun to dip below the horizon when we came across it, the grove. At first, it looked like any other part of the woods. Tall trees, thick underbrush, and an eerie silence hanging in the air. But as we ventured deeper, the atmosphere changed. The air became heavy, thick with something wrong. We found a clearing, a place to set up camp. But it wasn't the kind of clearing that felt safe or welcoming. There were strange markings carved into the trees, symbols I couldn't recognize, etched with a precision that made my skin crawl. The air was colder here, and the forest seemed unnaturally quiet. We were just about to start a campfire when we noticed them. At first, we thought they were people, maybe hikers who had come for a similar reason. But as they drew closer, I realized we were wrong. Their clothes were ragged, their skin pale and gaunt, eyes wide with some kind of fervor I couldn't explain. There was something unsettling about the way they moved, as if they were all part of something much darker. The leader of the group was tall, with dark, hollow eyes and a grin that stretched too far across his face. "Newcomers," he said softly, his voice a low rasp. "You found the Grove of the Forgotten." None of us spoke. We exchanged nervous glances, unsure of whether we should stay or leave. But the leader, Vincent, wasn't looking for answers. He was looking for something else. Something much darker. "You've come at the perfect time," he said, his voice dripping with a twisted satisfaction. "The ritual is about to begin. You'll be part of it." Before we could react, the cultists moved quickly, grabbing Caitlin, Ann, and Sean, pulling them toward the center of the clearing. I tried to fight back, but a sharp pain in my neck made everything spin. I collapsed to the ground, my vision blurring as I heard the others scream. When I came to, I was tied to a tree. My head throbbed, my arms and legs were bound tight. In front of me, Vincent stood over Caitlin, who was lying unconscious on a stone slab. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated with fear. But there was nothing I could do. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The fear in my chest grew as I realized the horrible truth. This wasn't just a cult. This was something far worse. The ritual began with chanting low and guttural at first, then building in intensity. Vincent raised a crude dagger above Caitlin, his face full of devotion, as if he were performing a sacred rite. The others surrounded her, eyes wide with anticipation. I couldn't move, couldn't shout. The ropes were too tight, the paralysis too complete. Vincent plunged the dagger into Caitlin's chest. It wasn't quick. It wasn't clean. The knife twisted in her as if the leader was drawing out her very essence. The air around us thickened, the chanting growing louder and more frenzied. Her body jerked, spasming violently, but her eyes remained fixed on me, empty of life. I could feel my stomach churn as I watched. Could feel her life fading, her screams echoing in my mind even though I knew she was already gone. The cultists began to chant louder, their voices blending into a horrible symphony of madness. The ground beneath me seemed to pulse with something ancient and malevolent. It wasn't until they began to pull her body apart, piece by piece, that I realized what was truly happening here. This wasn't just a ritual. They were absorbing something from her, something more than blood. They were taking her spirit, her very being. I don't know how much time passed before they turned their attention to Anne. I screamed for her, tried to reach out, but I was helpless, bound to the tree, a prisoner in my own body. One by one, they took the others. Sean's screams were the last thing I heard before darkness overtook me again. When I woke up again, I was alone in the clearing. The fire had long since gone out and the grove was silent. The sun was rising, but nothing felt right. I stumbled to my feet, feeling the weight of my limbs as if they weren't mine. The air was colder now, and the woods around me seemed wrong. The trees were twisted, their bark warped into grotesque shapes. I searched for my friends. I called out, but there was no answer. And then I saw them, or what was left of them. They were standing in the center of the clearing, their eyes empty, their bodies pale and stiff. But they weren't dead. Not really. They were something else. Their movements were jerky, like puppets on strings. But their eyes, they weren't their eyes anymore. They were empty, hollow. And then I saw Vincent, the leader. His eyes were no longer just dark, they were black, infinite, like the void itself. And he smiled. "Welcome," he said softly, his voice filled with glee. "You're one of us now." I realized with a cold rush of terror that it wasn't just a sacrifice. They didn't just want our bodies. They wanted our souls. They were turning us into something else, something monstrous. And I was next. I ran. I ran as fast as I could, crashing through the underbrush, not daring to look back. But I knew they were following. I could hear the twisted chants echoing behind me, always getting closer. The trees seemed to close in around me, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't let them catch me. I'm the only one left. The others, they're out there, forever changed, part of the cult. Their bodies and minds twisted into something unrecognizable. Why I survived. Maybe I'm the last one left to tell the story. I'll never forget the way they looked at me, the way Vincent smiled, knowing that the ritual would continue, that the cycle would never end. And I know, deep down, they'll come for me again, because once you've entered their